Right. So today we're going to like deep into travel,
Ooh, fun.
but not just like, the typical touristy stuff.
Right.
We're going a little bit deeper,
Okay.
more like those kind of like unexpected cultural encounters,
I like it.
the kind that make you think,
Yeah.
sometimes make you laugh.
Yes.
And to help us with this,
Mm-hmm.
we have this really cool YouTube video.
Oh, cool.
It's a conversation between Vanessa, she's an English teacher,
Okay.
and her husband, Dan.
Okay.
They're sharing all these personal experiences from traveling abroad.
And they're American, right?
Yeah, they are.
Okay, cool.
Which is always way more interesting.
Than like a travel blog or something.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really like
Uh,
sitting down with your friends who like just got back from an amazing trip,
okay.
and they're just telling you all these crazy stories
I love it.
about the different cultures and like all the little quirks,
Yeah.
the funny mishaps,
Uh-huh.
and just like those aha moments
Oh.
that you really only get when you travel.
Okay, so where do we start?
Well, they start by talking about like their first travel experiences.
Okay.
So Dan went to Costa Rica with his college,
Nice.
but it was more of a like resort bubble kind of thing.
Ah, okay.
Not really like true cultural immersion,
Right.
which actually makes you think, like, what even counts as a real travel experience?
Oh, that's interesting.
Right. Like, is it just about seeing the famous landmarks,
Uh-huh.
trying new foods?
Right.
Or is it
Yeah.
more about, like, challenging your own assumptions
Mm,
and actually connecting with people from different backgrounds?
that's a good question.
Vanessa's first trip was so different.
Oh, yeah.
She studied abroad in Oxford, England
Wow.
during college,
Mm-hmm.
and she just dove headfirst into, like, solo exploration.
Cool.
It's so interesting how, like, their early travel experiences probably shaped their whole outlook on travel.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so another thing they talk about is that stereotype that Americans don't travel abroad,
Oh, yeah, I've heard that.
but they actually bring up some data that kind of challenges that.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, so apparently 52% of Americans now have passports.
Interesting.
So it seems like maybe that stereotype is fading a little bit.
Yeah, maybe.
But Dan,
Yeah.
he brings up this funny thing he calls the Niagara Falls phenomena.
Oh, Niagara Falls.
Yeah, like, all those people who are like, oh, I've been to Canada,
Right, right.
but they've only been to Niagara Falls.
Okay, yeah, I get it.
So those weekend trips to bordering countries,
Right.
they might be kind of skewing the data.
I see. So, like,
Yeah.
not all passport holders are, like, seasoned travelers.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
And it makes you wonder, though, like, what is driving this increase in Americans getting passports?
Yeah.
Is it just like they want to see new places?
Uh-huh.
Or is it something deeper, like,
What do you think?
well, maybe
Yeah.
a growing curiosity about other cultures, or just this desire to connect with the wider world,
I like that.
I want to know, like, why do you travel?
Good question.
Or if you haven't traveled yet, like, why not?
That's a good one.
What are some things that pull you towards certain destinations?
Mm-hmm.
And what are some things that kind of hold you back?
Interesting.
I'd also love to hear from anyone who's traveled to the U.S.
Oh, yeah, me too.
What were your impressions?
Uh-huh.
Did you encounter any stereotypes about Americans?
Yeah, good or bad.
Yeah, that surprised you.
Oh, okay, let's move on.
Okay, so now let's talk about
Yes.
something we can all probably relate to.
What's that?
Cultural faux pas.
Ooh. Oh, they're fun.
Like those awkward moments when you realize you've totally messed up
Yes.
in a
you're
social
right.
situation.
Yeah.
So Dan shares this really cringeworthy story
Okay.
about being in France
Hmm.
and trying to do the beast greeting, the cheek kissing.
The cheek kissing, yeah.
He was totally caught off guard.
Oh,
And then Vanessa jumps in with this funny story about a food delivery mishap in Korea,
oh no.
all because of a language barrier.
Yeah, those things happen.
It's a good reminder that even like the simplest interactions
Uh-huh.
can get really complicated
Right.
when you throw in cultural and language differences.
It's true. It's like
Yeah.
it makes you realize how much we take for granted when we're in our own little bubble.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's not all awkward encounters.
Okay. Good.
They also share some really positive observations,
Good what?
like how safe Dan felt in South Korea,
Oh, interesting.
especially compared to how Americans often perceive urban safety.
Right.
It's amazing how, like, media portrayals and personal experiences can totally shape our perceptions of a place,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So Dan's observations kind of challenge those preconceived notions
Uh-huh.
and show that a lot of cities around the world are actually super safe and welcoming.
Right.
But then it gets even more interesting because Vanessa's sister, she had lived in Argentina
Mm-hmm.
and she was totally scared. to see people using their phones openly on a bus in South Korea
Oh, wow.
because she was so used to a higher risk of theft.
Wow. That's a good point.
Right.
Yeah.
Just shows how our past experiences really affect our sense of what's normal.
Mm-hmm.
Like what feels risky in one place might feel totally fine somewhere else.
Right, right.
And then Vanessa,
Yeah.
she talks about how she actually felt uncomfortable sometimes in Europe
Really? Why?
because people just assumed she was cool for being American,
Interesting.
especially when she was traveling with friends from other countries.
Wow, I never thought of that.
It's crazy how national identities can be perceived so differently
Yeah, that's wild.
when you travel abroad, right?
Definitely makes you think
Yeah.
about how much of our identity is tied to where we're from.
Yeah, and how other people see us based on that.
That's a good
Have you
point.
ever experienced that?
Like,
Were you ever surprised by how people reacted to your nationality,
mm-hmm.
either positively or negatively?
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, it's kind of like travel can make you question
Mm-hmm.
what you think is normal
Totally.
and cool, you know?
It's true.
So another thing Vanessa and Dan talk about is their experience teaching English in South Korea.
Oh, interesting.
They were really surprised by how different the education system was.
Yeah, we often hear about how tough those East Asian schools are.
Right, like the pressure to get good grades, and the
Mhm.
crazy long hours studying.
Yeah.
They actually saw firsthand how that can affect the students,
Oh, that's interesting.
not just in terms of academics,
Right.
but also like their mental health and well-being.
Yeah. Makes you think,
It does.
like, is there a way to have both?
Yeah.
Like to have academic success, but also make sure the kids are happy and healthy.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
tough balance.
And they said like their favorite memories from teaching were when they could take the students out of the classroom
Oh, that's nice.
to do something fun,
Yeah.
like hands-on activities.
I like that.
It's a good reminder that learning shouldn't be a chore.
Right.
It should be an adventure.
Makes you think about, like,
Yeah,
what's the purpose of education?
totally.
Is it just about getting into a good college? Or is it more about,
Yeah,
like, becoming a well-rounded person?
exactly. What do you think about that?
I'm curious to hear your thoughts, too.
Yeah. Have you seen these differences in education systems?
Yeah,
Maybe through your own experiences or things you've read or watched?
it's a big topic,
It is.
but worth talking about.
Okay, let's talk about something a little lighter.
Okay.
Transportation.
Oh, interesting.
Vanessa and Dan were amazed by how easy it was to get around in other countries,
Real?
like South Korea and Europe.
Okay.
They loved the public transportation there,
Nice.
like the trains and buses.
Yeah,
And they said the cities were so pedestrian friendly,
that's awesome.
and then they compared it to the U.S.,
Oh, boy.
where you basically need a car to go anywhere.
Yeah, pretty much.
And they talked about how that affects people who can't drive or choose not to.
Right.
And it's bad for the environment, too.
It makes you think about, like,
Hmm.
what's important to us. Like,
Yeah.
are we prioritizing cars over people?
It's a good question.
For those of you who have been to the U.S.,
Yeah,
how did you find the transportation?
especially outside the big cities.
Did you feel that car dependency?
I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
We often don't realize
Yeah,
how things could be different.
until we see them done differently.
Exactly.
So maybe there are some good ideas we can borrow
From other places.
to improve our own cities.
Make them more livable for everyone.
Right.
And the planet.
It's all about being open to new ideas.
And those ideas can come from anywhere.
So true.
We just have to be willing to look
And learn.
and sometimes unlearn what we thought we knew.
Exactly. One thing that really stood out to me
Mm.
was how Vanessa and Dan, they
Mhm.
noticed all these little ways
Yeah.
that cultures are different,
Okay.
like with city planning.
Oh, interesting.
They were super impressed by how pedestrian friendly
Okay.
a lot of cities in South Korea and Europe were.
Okay.
Like they had
Mm.
wide sidewalks and bike lanes and crosswalks.
Right.
And they said it really felt like
Yeah.
those cities put people first,
Interesting.
not cars.
Yeah, it's different in the U.S.
It is. They talked about how
Uh-huh.
in the U.S., you almost always need a car
Yeah,
to do anything.
it's true.
And they were saying how that affects people who can't drive
Right.
or choose not to.
Makes it harder for them to get around.
Definitely.
And it's not good for the environment either.
And at all.
It really shows you how
Yeah,
what we build reflects our values.
that's a good point.
Like if a city is designed for cars,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be harder to walk or bike there.
Yeah. And public transportation might not be as good. Makes you wonder if we could learn something from
Yeah.
other cities.
About how to design better cities.
Ones that are better for people.
More sustainable.
And better for the planet.
Yeah.
I think about when I've traveled.
Uh-huh.
And how much I've enjoyed exploring cities on foot.
Yeah.
Or by bike.
It's a different experience.
It is.
Than being stuck in a car.
Have you ever noticed that?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Like when you travel to places with different transportation systems?
Yeah, it changes your whole perspective.
It makes you realize that there are other ways of doing things.
Exactly.
So I think
Yeah.
what Vanessa and Dan's experiences really show us is that travel is about way more than just sightseeing.
It's about learning and growing.
Yeah, expanding your horizons.
Challenging your assumptions.
And becoming a more informed citizen of the world.
And having fun along the way.
Absolutely.
So keep exploring.
Keep learning.
And keep sharing your own unique perspective.
Because you never know who you might inspire.